Hello and welcome to the Citi-Zen-Ship show. My name is Clinton. We have a very special presentation for you guys this evening. We are here at the Qualicum Beach Civic Center in preparation for the all candidates debate for the Ladysmith-Oceanside area. In attendance today will be incumbent Adam Walker, his challengers BC Conservative candidate Brett Fee and BC NDP candidate Stephanie Higginson. We got all three of them for you guys tonight. This event is put on by the Qualicum Beach Chamber of Commerce, and we are very grateful for the Chamber for hosting us here at the Qualicum Beach Civic Center. So if you're ready for some political discourse, we'll jump right into it. I will cut to our MC for the evening, Mr. Matt Breedlove.
Sir, if you have an opinion, you can take it to the polls and leave it at that. First and foremost, I would respectfully acknowledge the unceded traditional territory of the Qualicum First Nations and Salish people and the traditional keepers of their land. We want to say thank you for allowing us to live, work, and play on your lands. We're hoping to have this all wrapped up in 2 hours. And what we're going to do, of course, we're going to have a series of questions. And just so you know, my list of questions, I got about 6 pages that look like this, if you can see that. So I'm not going to be able to get to everybody's questions. I do apologize for that. And I will do my best to cover as many topics as I can within that time frame. We have a new thing here called a rebuttal buck, that they each have 3 of them, that if they want to do a rebuttal on one of the questions, they can use those. And once they're used up, that's all they have. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for opening and closing remarks. This is an opportunity for the candidates to answer questions that you've submitted, and abusive or aggressive behavior will not be tolerated. If you do have an opinion, please take that to the polls when we have the election on the 19th of October. All right. So what I thought I would do is, as far as the opening remarks go, I thought I would just go by alphabetical order for their last name to start their opening remarks, and that means that we have Brett Fee of the Conservative Party to start with his opening remarks now.
Hello everybody, my name is Brett. Is my mic on? Awesome. Well, I would just like to thank the Chamber for putting on the event tonight and inviting me here. It's a pleasure to just have a chance to speak with everybody here tonight.
Put your mic right up closer to your mouth.
How's this, guys? Feeling better? All right. Okay, my name is Brett, and you're probably wondering why I'm wearing a pink shirt today, but my mom's watching, and she's on her 4th battle of cancer right now. She's in hospice, and she has about a month to live. So, Mom, if you're watching, I love you, and I really hope to do you proud tonight. As your Conservative candidate for Ladysmith-Oceanside, I stand before you here today because our incumbent government has failed us on so many critical issues. Our healthcare system is in crisis with longer wait times and fewer doctors. Mental health and addictions are spiraling out of control, leading to rising homelessness and very unsafe streets. Public safety has been compromised, with crime increasing in our communities while the NDP turns a blind eye. And let's not forget the cost of living. Seniors and families are being crushed under skyrocketing prices. But there is hope on the horizon. Myself, the Conservative Party of BC, and we, the people, are committed to real solutions. Empowering our healthcare patients, restoring public safety, and making life affordable once again. It's time for a government that works for you, not against you.
Candidate Stephanie Higginson from the NDP.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I want to start by acknowledging that we are gathered on the unceded territory of the Qualicum Nation, and I'm honored to be here in a room with so many engaged folks. We have this funny-shaped riding, and for a number of, anomalous circumstances, we find ourselves in a situation where perhaps, you might not know me because I come from a different part of the riding. And so I thought I'd take a minute to introduce myself to you so that you can understand and know who I am and what my experience is. I was honored to serve as a school board trustee from 2014 to 2022 in the Nanaimo Ladysmith School District, where I was the vice chair of the board, the chair of the education committee, and the chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Advisory, the co-chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Advisory Committee. And some folks wonder, what's the big deal about being a school trustee? Well, we actually oversaw a budget of $180 million, which is bigger than some of the towns and cities in the province. During that time, I was elected by my colleagues, my provincial colleagues, to be the president of the BC School Trustees Association. And it was during that time, in my first year as president, that COVID hit. And I became part of a provincial leadership team with Dr. Bonnie Henry and a number of ministers, and we guided BC's public education system through the COVID pandemic, and we did it successfully. We were the largest jurisdiction in North America to have uninterrupted learning for students during the pandemic. Thank you. During that time, I worked with 60 boards of education from across the province who all had differing political views and different experiences with the pandemic. And we managed to keep ourselves operating under one school plan because all of those boards of education saw themselves reflected in the plan, saw their community's needs reflected in the plan, and felt heard and understood by the collaborative process we used. And being a collaborative leader is what drives me. Bringing people together to solve difficult problems with real and measurable outcomes is what drives me. Sorry, can you just pause that? Did you just say I have 10 seconds left? Okay. That's interesting. I have a timer going that says I have a whole minute left, but anyway, sorry. So I would like to make sure that when we are facing multiple crises, that we have a community leader who makes sure that our community's views and unique characteristics are reflected in provincial legislation. And that's why I want to be the next MLA for Ladysmith-Oceanside. Their timers are different than ours.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
Independent candidate Adam Walker.
Thank you very much, Matt. Oh, I can't hear myself at all. How's this? Is my mic not even on? It's rigged. Huh. Now Matt can't get rid of me. This is great. So before I begin, I want to recognize that we're gathered on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish peoples, especially the Qualicum First Nation. Chief Rakama, thank you so much for joining us here with other elected officials. I want to thank the Chamber for hosting this. Matt Breedlove, you do an incredible job of this. And I was talking with Jared before. He says, no, we don't need the full room. We can do half the room. But this is Qualicum Beach and people show up. So thank you all as well for coming here tonight. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Adam Walker. I served on your town council and I've lived in this community my entire life. My background is a small business owner. I ran a tech company for nearly 2 decades. My wife's a registered nurse working in this community, and we're raising our 2 daughters on a small farm just about a 10-minute walk from here. I was elected MLA in 2020, and it was the honor and privilege of my life to be able to serve this community. Over the last 4 years, we booked 3,000 constituent meetings, and I learned a lot from all of you. Not just about the challenges that we face, but how much stronger we are when we work together. And through that process, we were able to come up with some really good things for this community. But about a year ago, I became an independent MLA and things changed dramatically. My office budget doubled. I went from 2 staff to 6 staff, and we were able to start tackling some of the issues firsthand in this community directly. We got 12,000 people on a wait list for a family doctor, a wait list that's 3 years long. And to make matters worse, government just canceled a health center that was supposed to be opening in Coombs this February, a health center that was supposed to connect thousands of people with primary care. But being an independent MLA, I've been able to lead initiatives directly. We've been putting together a plan for a new health center in Parksville, a 15-patient exam room clinic that's able to connect thousands of people with care,
I see that my time is also running near, so I just want to thank you all for coming here today, and I hope that through this evening that I can earn your trust and show you how, as an independent MLA, we can put our community first. I think it's 2 minutes.
We're here with Jared Shaw, the CEO of the Qualicum Beach Chamber of Commerce. Jared, thank you so much for hosting this event.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's our responsibility as a chamber to do this. Tonight came out extremely well. There's a little bit of spiciness. A lot more people than we thought might show up. So I think the engagement in this town is really fantastic. And I'm just happy we could do this.
I'm very happy too, and I got to say it was a really packed house here. So again, thank you to the Qualicum Beach Chamber of Commerce for hosting and organizing this great event. All the best, Jared.
Qualicum Beach currently faces a significant lack of primary care. Citizens without access to primary care can languish on wait lists for several years before being connected to a nurse practitioner or family doctor. What specifically will you do if elected to improve access to primary care in our community? And I'll start with Stephanie.
Thank you. Access to primary care is really important. I actually sat last night watching my husband, who has this massive infection in his eye, sitting in the front row watching me last night because we don't have a family doctor. And so there was my poor husband looking like a cyclops. And I said to him tonight, please don't come. It's very distracting and people will wonder what's going on. So please don't come. Listen, this is the #1 issue I'm hearing about on the doors from people. Absolutely, this is an issue that we are going to hit the ground running working on. Here's what I know. I know that we have started to make headway on this issue. We changed the family doctor pay scale, which means we've hired 800 family doctors into the province in the past year, more than any other province in the country. 4,000 people a month right now, a week, are getting attached to a family doctor. So we need to have that action start here. I'm not sure why it hasn't made it to Oceanside yet. I know in Comox, MLA Rona Ray Leonard has taken that wait list down from about 14,000 down to 2,000 people, so I know it's possible. I know the tools are there, and I know the action is happening, and it's my intention absolutely to work on this because it's not just affecting people in the audience. You're not just strangers that it's affecting. I don't have a family doctor. We need to do better on this, and we're starting to make headway on this. 4,000 people a week in British Columbia are getting attached to a family doctor, and we need to bring that action to Oceanside.
Candidate Walker.
We heard from the NDP candidate that she says she doesn't know why people aren't getting connected with a family doctor here. How on earth is a candidate supposed to hit the ground running to solve the problem if they don't even know why it's not working? We need team-based care here. We need to have a clinic in this community where doctors want to work. It cannot be the 1 and 2 and 3 doctor practice that we have right now. You know, the Division of Family Practice, they do recruitment. They're doing a pretty good job, but they got nowhere to take the patients. They did a survey to all of the existing doctors and asked them how many are going to retire in the next 5 years. They refused to share that number because if it was made public, people wouldn't want to live here. As an independent MLA, I have a plan to attach people in this community with a family doctor. For the last 6 months, I worked on a medical clinic plan for Parksville. Yes, it's far away, but that's going to be what's going to draw our list down from 12,000 down to 6,000. We're working with a different group that's working on a health center here in Qualicum Beach. That process is moving forward, but it's going to take 3 years, and people can't wait that long. We need to make sure that we have a leader in this community that's able to tackle this head on, right here in this community. You know, when the province says we got 800 new doctors in the province and none of them are in this community, that's a problem. That's why we need to have an independent MLA that's able to take this on headstrong right in this community and make sure that people here get the health care that they deserve.
Conservative candidate, Brett.
Yes, this is a real problem, and it's gotten a lot worse in the last 7 years since this NDP government's got into power. It's a real tragedy. Over 1 million people without a family doctor in this province is absolutely unacceptable. We spend a lot of money on healthcare in this province. We're number 2 in the OECD nations in healthcare spending, but we rank 26th out of 28 in wait times. We're 3rd worst. So we have the money, it's just not hitting the front lines. It's not getting to our doctors. The other thing is, I was knocking doors the other week in the New Bay. I met a retired couple whose daughter just graduated from the UBC medical program. She just got poached by a group out of Montana. And she said, you know what, Mom and Dad, I'd love to stay, but houses are half the price in Montana. They're paying me better, and they're paying me in US dollars. And I have a lot of senior doctors working around me, and my working conditions are far more favorable. So guess what? Doctors don't go to school for 10 years to get treated the way they're being treated here right now. So we have to take bold action to make sure that our doctors actually want to be here. That's number one. Number two, we got to remove this red tape with foreign doctors. Why is it so hard to get a qualified individual, say from South Africa, working here? That's absolutely unacceptable. We got to remove these regulations, streamline the process so we can get care to our people right away.
Sticking with the primary care subject, I'm going to start with this thing with direct fees. What will your party do to end the closures of emergency rooms across BC? And what will your party do to ensure that Mid-Island hospitals have enough doctors to ensure appropriate care?
Island Health, God bless them, fantastic workers. There are 27,000 employees in Island Health, and only just over 1/3 of those people are frontline workers. What that means is we have a 2/3 bureaucracy in Island Health, and don't get me wrong, I love a good bureaucrat, especially if they can keep the lines moving and book people in fast. But we have a systemic problem here right now where our current government is putting the system ahead of the patients. We have money for healthcare, it's just not being used for healthcare. We got to make sure the money reaches those poor nurses. I can't believe the conditions they're working under right now. And doctors, I already mentioned why they're not here, why they're leaving. So this is a situation where we got to make sure the money reaches the patients so we can put the patients first.
Candidate Walker.
The challenge with ERs is a real one. You know, when something goes wrong in your life and you go to the emergency room, that is probably the worst time of your day, of your week, of your month, of your year, of your lifetime when you need that care. And when people go to the emergency room and that care is not available, that is a failure of our system. I don't know why I'm already at 15 seconds left. The solution to this is to take a step back and look at what some of the barriers are to getting ER docs into our communities. So Port McNeil is a good example. The ER there in Port Hardy, Port McNeil, some of the Northern Ireland communities, some of the ERs there are shutting down not because they don't have staff, but because the staff that are there need childcare, or they don't have enough resiliency because people are sick, or people can't afford to stay there, or they're evicted. If we can work as a community in some of these rural and remote communities in the interior and tackle some of the underlying issues that are keeping doctors and nurses from being able to work in our system, that's going to make a big difference. But the idea of laying off 2/3 of the staff that aren't nurses and doctors, that's not going to fix the problem. There are lab techs, there are administrators, there are people in our hospitals that do important work, and we should not denigrate them like my other candidate here to my left.
Thanks. Oh, I'll wait for the timers to get going. There we go. Any interruption to services is stressful. I have 2 teenage boys. I can tell you how many times I'm at the Nanaimo Regional General Hospital ER. It's a lot. One of my sons has like a frequent flyer card there, and it's stressful to think that you could roll up to the emergency room and have it not be open. The Ladysmith Urgent Care Center is often sometimes closed, and that's why we're taking action actually to hire and train more doctors, and we're building more hospitals so that this doesn't have to happen. The Rustad government closed or downgraded 69 hospitals and made local access to healthcare nearly impossible. We've built 29 hospitals, and despite what's been said, we have tripled the program's capacity to credential internationally trained doctors and have hired 900 internationally trained doctors in the last year. We've hired over 6,000 nurses, over 1,000 internationally trained nurses in the last year. Doctors are moving to BC. We've hired more family doctors than any other province in Canada. So the stats that we're getting from my Conservative candidate are just not correct, and we are taking action to do this. We've added 128 spaces to the UBC Medical School and are opening a new medical school out in Surrey at SFU in order to tackle this issue. All of this is at risk with a privatized healthcare system, and John Rustad's government overlooked building that medical school, and they will continue. They left us with a longer primary doctor wait list than we have now.
We know the climate is changing. Temperatures are getting colder and colder. I have a two-part question for you here. At present, our region has no dedicated winter shelter space. Do you believe there should be a winter shelter? And if so, where should it be located? And the second part of that, what are you doing to address, or what would you do to address homelessness in our area? And I'll start with candidate Walker.
Matt, you can call me Adam. I know it's easier for you. So we got two things going on here. Cold weather shelter, the weather's getting cold. We've actually already found a location for a cold weather shelter in this community, but right now government and BC Housing is blocking it from opening. There's a church in Parksville that stepped up that said that they want to make that available. There's a nonprofit society that stepped up that says we can staff it. There are clearly people on the street right now that say we need a safe place to go at night. But right now, BC Housing is throwing extra roadblocks at this nonprofit society that's not being required of other communities across this province. That is unacceptable, and government should not be worried about politics during an election when people could get really seriously injured for being outside. Secondly, what are we going to do long term? One of the things that we've started working on through the independent office, having extra staff in my office makes a huge difference. What we started working on is an initiative of a tiny home village in our community so that folks can get off the streets and they can get the stability and care that they deserve. We've seen these in other communities across this province. Kelowna, Duncan, Victoria, Port Alberni's just opened one. A series of 8x8 homes that have a bed, a heater, a door, and the wraparound security that comes from the predictability of a place to put your head down at night. That's something that our community needs so that we can get folks off the street, we can get them connected to the services that they need, and we can get them back into society as working, productive members, because, in fact, they deserve it.
Thanks. You know, the issue of a permanent cold weather shelter is one that I've been talking to folks about in this community, and it is, you know, as candidate Walker has explained, an incredibly complicated issue, and it shouldn't be this complicated. It should be easier for us to serve the needs of the people who are in our community, particularly in a life-saving situation. And that's something that I would like to work on, is to streamline this situation. I don't think we should be having these conversations at the very last minute in an emergency situation when there's, you know, the time is running out. We should be having these conversations beforehand. These issues have a lot to do with zoning regulations, which means you have to work closely with the local government. It is not my goal as an MLA to make enemies with the local government. What I want to do is work closely on them to solve this issue in a way that can be ongoing and reliable, and that's what we will do. If I get to be your MLA. When it comes to solving the homelessness issue, this is an ongoing issue that our government has been focused very, very, very hard on. We've brought almost thousands, we're almost at the thousands of units of affordable, low barrier housing and low barrier housing to this region. And we're really proud of the work that we've done on that, and we will continue to do it. Places like Orca Place, which I know wasn't the, you know, it didn't come in the most, there was a little bit of controversy when it came in, but it is serving the needs of both the community and the people who are living in that home. And we need more examples like that, and we are committed to that, and we have shown that we can do that, and we will continue to serve the needs of those people.
Conservative Rugby.
Yeah, I'm 110% behind a cold weather shelter, but I think it needs to be in consultation with the public about where it's going to go. We ought to be careful about just putting these things in without checking with our constituents first about what their thoughts are. So you're not going to find me making decisions without consulting with the public first and making sure that it works for our community as a whole. But absolutely, on the face of it, cold weather shelters are certainly a necessary solution, but not a permanent solution. This is sort of a Band-Aid for a larger issue that you had mentioned regarding homelessness. Why have people fallen into homelessness? And there's various reasons. Some people have just fallen on hard times. Others have mental illnesses and other things. So what we got to do is look at the underlying conditions here. A lot of it has to do with this current idea that somehow when we're doing drugs on the streets, and this is causing people to sort of lose sight of their life to the point where You know, it's becoming normal when you're seeing people out on the street doing drugs and just sleeping in tents out in the middle of our communities. This is a situation we really have to address from the root cause. And rather than giving them more government subsidized hard drugs, what we want to do is focus on treatment and rehabilitation so that we can give these folks an opportunity to get healthy once again. So that's our plan, is less emphasis on giving free drugs, more emphasis on rehabilitation and treatment for those folks who are finding themselves without a home.
Conservative Brett Fee, I'll start this question with you and we'll move across the table from there. What is your policy on caps on rent increases?
Well, a lot of times there's good intentions by government when they implement these rent caps, but history has shown that putting blanket caps on rents actually results in higher rents over time. So I would be leery about just implementing caps on rents without looking at the broader picture as a whole. What we want to do to solve this housing crisis is, rather than putting caps on rents, we want to remove red tape so that we can get building again. So that's one thing we want to do. And right there, that will remove a lot of barriers in terms of housing stock. The other thing we want to do is, in terms of affordability, is making sure that those folks who are paying a mortgage or they're paying rent, they can get tax rebates on the rent that they're on the money they're putting out for their rent. So this is how we want to attack affordability right away. And we want to also kickstart our economy so that we can produce materials in this province once again, so that the cost of inputs in building new housing goes down, so that we actually have real affordable housing and not government subsidized housing that goes over budget, which they do call affordable.
Adam.
It's weird hearing a candidate say, I'm leery about caps on rent increases, when that's been the model in BC for a very, very long time. The challenge that we see is that the cap on rent increases right now have been pegged to inflation, and it's created some serious challenges for landlords when their costs are going up higher than that of inflation. So we need to make sure that we're looking at the system more broadly to make sure that landlords are incentivized to want to keep those rental properties here. I've heard from a lot of seniors in this community who have been renting a home for a very long time, who find themselves with an eviction notice because it just doesn't make sense anymore for a landlord to keep the place going. And it is absolutely tragic when you've got a 70-year-old woman living alone that comes into the office sort of 3 days before the eviction comes with nowhere to go, and they end up living on the streets. And no, they're not drug addicted. No, they don't get free drugs. They're just people who are on hard times. And we've got a lot of folks on the waterfront and throughout our community that are facing those challenges right now. So we want to make sure that we've got a system in place that incentivizes landlords to create more rentals to make sure that cost is predictable and that the supply is there for people. I heard about this model of a tax rebate for people who pay rent. And, you know, a lot of us go, well, I'd love to write off my mortgage. But, you know, in jurisdictions where they've done that, the price of housing has gone up. And when you look at what that tax rebate is actually going to do, when it is applied to someone who makes up to $250,000 a year, it's a tax rebate on those who make the most money. It's a tax rebate on those who need it the least, and it's not going to help those that need help the most in our communities.
Thanks. Just watching the timers get everything going. Listen, this is a near and dear issue to my heart, and it's one of the reasons why I ran. My parents, who did everything right in their life, were priced out of the rental market to the point where we didn't know where they were going to go, and I watched them move consistently as seniors on a fixed income. Every time they moved, my mom would dent the car because she couldn't park it in the new parking lot. She doesn't drive very well anymore. And it was real. So my husband and I cashed in all of our savings and bought them a condo and rent it back to them below market value. And we hope it works as an investment, but here I am advocating for lower housing prices. So, you know, I'm kind of in a double-edged sword here. But this government has capped rental prices, and we think that it's necessary to do when we are in an affordability crisis. You have to give security to renters when you are in an affordability crisis. And, you know, we're working on that by cracking down on speculators, by talking about ending the short-term rentals. We've turned 20,000 short-term rentals back into long-term accommodations, and that's working here. I had a family on the doorstep who could not find a place to rent when their house burned down. And then over the course of the time that they were in there, the short-term rental ended and they saw tons of availability of long-term rentals and they started to pay less. So our actions are working.
What? Oh, okay.
Rebuttal.
You know, those short-term rental rules that we saw come through our province, we're going to have a huge impact on the tourism sector here. And what we saw with the changes, we actually saw more short-term rentals because of all of the shenanigans that are going on in Victoria. We saw more short-term rentals in our community than we started. So this idea that these laws, these changes have all of a sudden freed up all this housing in this community, it just doesn't play out when you look at the numbers. The other challenge that, I got 10 seconds, the other challenge that we need to take action on and we need to hold government to account for is the residential tenancy branch is screwing landlords right now. We've got way too many people in this community.
It's a short time.
I'm not even sure what that was.
Adam, this question is for you. Starting and then going to the other candidates. We'll go to Brett after you and then over to Stephanie. Bill 44. Residents of Oceanside have expressed concern at the government's implementation of Bill 44 that negated their democratic right to engage in the planning of the properties they own. Will you, as a candidate, seek the repeal of this bill and restore the integrity of citizens' role in community planning?
You know, when Bill 44 was going through last fall, I spoke to that legislation more than any other MLA in the entire legislature other than the housing minister that was on the other side of this. There's some serious concerns that I had about that bill. If you took a community like Chartwell, all the services are in, it's all underground, and you said, we're going to put a bunch of fourplexes in. The cost to taxpayers to tear up those roads, to put in bigger sewer pipes and bigger water pipes, that's a real cost. That's a concern I have. When community members are prohibited by law from attending a public hearing, when council is prohibited by law from holding a public hearing about the impacts of development in a community, that's a serious concern I have. What we've seen since that bill's come through, honestly, is not a whole lot. It was supposed to mean that we were going to get all sorts of affordable homes. Well, the fact is, it's very difficult to tear down a house and put in a fourplex. And so even if this bill remains, and even if local government doesn't change it, we're not going to see a lot of concerns. But the way that this went through, when government did not consult with mayors, they didn't consult with council, they didn't consult with the broader public, and made these sweeping changes all across this province, I thought that was unacceptable. It leads to distrust with government. It leads to a lack of faith in a system, and it put our local governments in a really ugly situation. Thank you very much.
Yes, we will repeal Bill 44. That's number one. And we're going to put the power back to the people. That's the second thing. The third thing, the Conservative Party of BC has committed to infrastructure funding for municipalities who have solid plans for how they're going to improve housing stock in their communities. But once again, we want to leave it up to the people to decide how they want to develop their towns. But we want to provide the infrastructure funding, because these poor municipalities, the RDN, the town of Qualicum Beach, I can't imagine what you guys are dealing with right now with this. I feel terribly for you. I can't imagine what kind of debacles you're dealing with at the moment. So we want to give power back to the municipalities and support them so that they can get the infrastructure upgrades they need. Water and sewage specifically. How can we plan for growth in our communities if we put the cart ahead of the horse? So it's really important to make sure that we invest in infrastructure, but then leave it up to the people to decide how they want their communities to look into the future.
Thank you. You know, I talked about the importance of housing and housing and affordability just a minute ago and how it hits my family very close. And density and supply is what helps us, having more supply is what helps us with the cost of housing. I just read an article last week, or maybe it was this week, that the enrollment is down in this school district. And, you know, we know why the enrollment's down. The enrollment's down because it costs over $1 million for a house here. And the density rules don't say you have to tear down your house and you have to build a fourplex on it. They say you can if you want to. That's what they say. You can if you want to. And a lot of the rules actually are not impacted by, in Parksville, you have an infill already on density rules that was 30%. You still can only build on 30% of the property in Parksville. So the character and the uniqueness of the community is not going to change as a result of this rule. What is going to change is that in a community like Parksville, where I knocked on the door and had a woman say to me, I can't afford to live in my house anymore, is that she can now quickly and legally put a suite in her home and get revenue from that home. We can have families come and put a carriage house on the property, and families can be taking care of families. The bill does not say you have to do it. It makes it easier for you to do it if you want to do it. And we know that housing is the #1 issue. Housing affordability is one of the #1 issues we are hearing about, and you have to be bold if you are going to tackle this issue. And we worked with Parksville when they had concerns about density, and the government changed it. All of this is at risk if we elect a Russ Taggart.
This question will start with candidate Brett B. of the Conservative Party. Do you support subsidized childcare in BC? Will you maintain current programs?
We're not going to touch childcare, but what I have seen with childcare is I know a lot of people in the community who are childcare providers, and they've decided to close their facilities because of these restrictions, and they're telling me it's not working for their business. And then the other thing, I know a lot of parents, Courtney is one of them, she's my campaign manager. It took her a long time just to find childcare. You think that it's available and it's just $10, but it's actually not like that. They're not available. You can't find them to begin with. So parents are having a really tough time actually finding childcare right now. It's a great idea. We don't plan on touching it, but in reality, what's happening right now is not working.
Candidate Walker?
Strange to say that it's such a problem, but we're not going to touch it. We need more childcare spaces in our community, full stop. When you do not have enough childcare, it means that people, whether it's a mother or father, aren't able to get to work. That has huge economic costs to society. When you don't have access to childcare, often it means that children don't get their best start in life. And when you talk to the ECEs and the ECAAs, the people that actually do the work in the childcare spaces, they love their jobs. We need to see more of that in this community. When I was on council, we had the opportunity to apply for a grant for a new childcare space in this town. And you know, that was a difficult time. Scott and I, at the time we disagreed on it, and it was, but you know, we all came around, and all of council supported that initiative. All of council saw that that was an important thing for our community. And when that childcare center, Into the Woods, opened up, it was life-changing for 37 families in this community. We need to keep expanding childcare opportunities like that. We are right now possibly going to lose both the Qualicum Commons and the Craig Street Commons sites. The school board is going through some real challenges. Enrollment is not just because families aren't moving here. There's an independent school taking lots of students as well. But if we lose those 2 sites, there's 4 childcare sites that we could lose. We could lose nearly 100 spaces in this community. And the impact on our community would be absolutely devastating. So not only do we need to see more childcare spaces, we need to work together as a community to make sure that the Qualicum Commons and the Parksville Commons are able to be maintained as community assets so we don't lose those spaces as well.
NDP candidate Stephanie Higginson.
As a working mother who did not have access to reliable and affordable childcare, this is such a critical issue. My professional life was interrupted because I could not find access to affordable and reliable childcare. Since the NDP has come in, we have given we've created 148,000 spaces for families across the province. I talked to a woman on the door whose childcare costs went from over $1,200 a month to $320 a month. Those are life-changing savings. Think about that over the course of the year that you have, the number of years that you have children. And not only that, before and after school space is critical, and we need to have more of it. We're seeing it in the Nanaimo Ladysmith School District working and rolling out. We need to start doing the same thing in school district number 69. All of these things these are life-changing decisions for families, and we are absolutely committed to it. Not only that, I'm not entirely sure about why people aren't into what my conservative candidate said about people not wanting to go into the profession, because we have wage stabilization now, because we recognize the importance of attracting more early childcare educators and what critical links they are to building our economy. So no, we will not get rid of subsidized childcare. We will keep it, we will grow it, and I will proudly make sure that we can get more access to it in the Oceanside area. $10 a day childcare changes lives, and we should have it here just like we have it in other parts of it.
As the children get a little older, they need education. NDP Stephanie Higginson. The Qualicum Beach, or the Qualicum School District, has recently had to make approximately $1.2 million in cuts to their 2024-2025 budget. What steps will your government take to ensure public education is properly funded?
Thanks for this question. You know, I was a trustee under the Rustad Liberal government when Rustad was in the Liberal Party, and it was totally different experience than being a trustee under the NDP government. One of the biggest problems I think that we are facing right now is that our funding model for education is based on a per student. 88% of it is per student funding. And so when you have changes in your enrollment, it really affects your bottom line. And also, as school districts, you have to have a balanced budget. So we have to have a balanced budget when we were in the school district. These are really important issues, but I also believe that one of the most important things we can do is take a review of that funding model and see if it's still serving the needs of the school boards, because it's not necessarily about the amount, but it's about how it's distributed. And you know, we really need to make sure that we are funding our public education system properly, and I know this government is committed to it because I saw it. I saw it when I was a school trustee. In my first term under the Liberal government, all we did was make cuts. In my second term, we hired 100 teachers. We built back our QP staff, our support staff, to be bigger and better than it was before. And so what I would love to do is to be able to make sure that we look at that funding model so that school boards who are experiencing changes in enrollment don't feel that pressure so much. This will be at risk.
Thanks, Matt. You know, hearing the NDP candidate say, under the previous government, our school boards faced significant cuts and it was difficult. Well, we're facing significant cuts right now under an NDP government. Our school board's trustees are going through incredible pressure to try to balance the books. They have had to cut teaching staff, EA staff. We've got teachers right now that don't know whether they're going to have a job in the very near future. You can't teach a class if you don't know next quarter if you're not going to have a job anymore. That is totally inappropriate. We need to make sure that this government funds our education system appropriately. During the budget process, I was able to speak with every minister, and education is one that I spent a lot of time talking with. And I asked them, what kind of increases are we seeing in mental health supports for students this year in this budget? The answer was zero. In fact, it was worse than that. The Minister of Education didn't know where the decimal point was in her notes. And she said, well, 100,000, 100 million, 100 billion, 100,000. It was a very weird thing to watch. We need to make sure that students get the education that they deserve. We need to make sure that our education system is well funded. We've got students in this new riding that are going to their kindergarten class in portables. We have more portables now than before the NDP government got elected. We need to reprioritize a lot of things in this province, and one of them is education, because that is our next generation, and every dollar we spend there is a dollar well invested.
Conservative, Brett B.
Yes, I would have to agree with my colleague. We have to look at how the money is distributed. Once again, Conservatives are known for fiscal responsibility, so when we dive into this, into the books here, we're going to take a close, hard look at where is this money actually going? Is it getting to the teachers? Is it getting to the EAs? Is it getting into the classrooms? Because that's where the money is needed right now. I can't imagine being a teacher right now in a classroom of 30 kids with no support at all and kids at various learning stages. We need to make sure that our teachers have more support in the classroom for those who might be at a different learning stage. And we also have to invest in support services around the teachers so that they can be protected and supported while they're teaching the kids. But I want to talk a little bit about post-secondary, because one of the things we want to do here we want to provide government funding within our post-secondary institutions and allocate and promote and incentivize training in essential fields like medicine, engineering, and skilled trades. So this is where we want to put our money when it comes to post-secondary and provide a lot of incentives that way. But you're always going to find me as a big advocate for education in our riding, and I can guarantee that I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that our teachers are supported.
This question will start with Conservative Representative Brett B. If BC, I'm reading this directly from that was printed to me. If BC becomes a Conservative majority, will there be a stand against the carbon tax to join other provinces in a refusal to pay the carbon tax similar to Alberta and Saskatchewan?
Well, we don't want to have an adversarial arrangement with anybody. But yes, we're going to get rid of the carbon tax.
Am I answering the question as it's written? Because it's if there's a Conservative majority government, it sounds like the answer is there.
Well, what is your opinion on that question then?
I actually find it quite frustrating. So we have two leaders of two political parties that both say they believe in climate change. They both say that we need to do more to protect our environment, which we do. And yet they're both backtracking on one of the most economically efficient policies that exist in this province to make sure that we reduce our emissions. The carbon tax is a painful thing for a lot of people. If you're a farmer, you don't get that money back. That needs to get fixed. If you live in northern British Columbia and your home heating fuel is costing you $200 or $300 a month in carbon tax, that money shouldn't leave your community. But this idea that we shouldn't be putting a tax on pollution doesn't make any sense at all to me. The fact that we've got a premier that for 7 years talked about how important this was, and then right before an election when he knew that it was unpopular, he backtracked on it, it makes no sense at all. Large industrial emitters should be paying. And we need to make sure that people in this community are looked after and that we look after our environment. That tax is supposed to be revenue neutral. It's not supposed to be to move money to low-income people in Lower Mainland. It's supposed to be something that goes out and comes back in and is equal a way possible. It is the most efficient way to tackle climate change, and the fact that both parties have given up on this fight against climate change disturbs me immensely.
Stephanie Higginson.
Thank you. Climate change is such a critical issue that we really need to start factoring into any one of our economic decisions. And I think it's really important to remember that BC was one of the first provinces to have the carbon tax, and we had it for many, many years. And the cost of it on families, actually, most of it for the consumer carbon tax, you got it back in a rebate. But what we also recognized is that we are in an affordability crisis right now, and so we are removing the consumer carbon tax while we're in an affordability crisis. But the corporate carbon tax, the people who are actually doing the most damage to our environment, will still have the carbon tax that they will have to pay. And what our premier at the time, now our party leader running to be premier, said was that they would remove the carbon tax if the federal government removed the requirement for the backstop, because you are required to have it. And if you don't have it, the federal government puts it in for you. Now, our conservative John Rustad kept running around saying that he was going to get rid of the carbon tax. Well, you can't just get rid of the carbon tax. There's a federal backstop. And so what we said was, listen, if they remove it, then we will get rid of it as well, because we know this is an affordability crisis. We have many, many other tools in our climate change toolbox that we are still using, and we are going to continue to do that, but we're going to make sure that the corporate polluters are paying.
Independent Adam Walker, this question will go to you first, and we'll go to Conservative Brett B, and then back over to NDP. What do you proposed to support economic and environmental sustainability on private managed forest land?
We got the same question at the Ladysmith Town Hall. And when you look into the mountain behind us right now, over this way, it's all land owned by Mosaic. That's the private managed forest lands. That should be a tremendous financial opportunity for people in this community. Up until recently, most of those logs, or a large portion of those logs that were harvested from that land base, were exported as raw logs to China, to Asia, and to the United States. That is a tremendous loss of opportunity and financial impact on our community. The other thing that we need to look at with those private managed forest lands is that they get massive tax breaks, property tax breaks, to manage those lands in an environmentally sustainable way. And when you look at some of the logging that's taking place on Mount Arrowsmith, right up to Englishman River, behind Mount Benson, there's some massive clear cuts there that don't represent sustainable forestry. We have a tremendous opportunity with those forests, and we have a corporation, Mosaic, that's actually owned half by us as taxpayers through our pension fund, that is more focused on getting the maximum value for themselves and not focused on value for our communities. We should be, with some of the wood that's coming off of these forests, some of the best quality wood in the world, we should be creating jobs right here, value added, using those forests, and we should manage that forest in a more ecologically sustainable way, because this is our watershed, this is where we get our water, and this is where our habitat lives.
Stephanie Higginson.
Thank you. The trees, the trees, the trees, you know, it's such a critical issue. But it's a complicated one. I knock on a doorstep and someone says, you're not doing enough for our forestry industry. I knock on another door and people say, we've got to save the trees. And so this is really a difficult issue to solve. Private managed forest land is, you know, Vancouver Island is overrepresented by this, and it's an issue that really requires us to, excuse me, sorry, a lot of talking lately. It really requires us to have a good, thoughtful discussion about it and make sure that we are not taking away from the practice of forestry while also allowing sustainable old growth forest to continue. We can practice, we have really good examples of sustainable forestry in British Columbia, and we need to make sure that there is still an economic viability out of our forests with the sustainable forestry practices we know that are possible, while also putting together all the pieces of the Old Growth Protection Act and making sure that we actually start to protect those old growth trees and don't allow them to be removed for the generations that come ahead of us. Behind us? Ahead of us? Is it behind us or ahead of us?
Conservative Credit B.
Yeah, we really need to strike a balance between what's best for all of us as British Columbians in terms of economic development and also in terms of our ecosystems and maintaining the integrity of our ecosystems. One of the big things on our platform is water management and water restoration, making sure that we have water. Without water, we do not have life. So we have to ensure that we maintain and manage the backcountry very effectively. It's interesting, I went to a BC Wildlife Federation talk, and these people are the experts in the industry. Right now, they don't appreciate having Victoria dictating down on them when they're the experts. These people want to see controlled and prescribed burning and backcountry management take place once again, so we don't have these massive forest fires. In reality, yes, climate change is exacerbating some of these concerns regarding forest fires, but there's a lot we can do in terms of backcountry management. If it is managed effectively and all the fuel is reduced through controlled and prescribed burning to reduce these very intense forest fires that we're seeing nowadays. But the last time we invested anything in the backcountry was back in the 80s when we had a social credit government here. So it's a good thing that we're bringing the Conservatives back in, because then you can guarantee we're going to take care of that backcountry and ensure and preserve the ecosystem for generations to come.
To add on to that, Tayo, we have a rebuttal.
This is a prime example of someone who means well but doesn't have a thing doesn't have a clue what he's talking about. We don't do prescribed burns on the coast. We're in a coastal Douglas fir ecosystem, and that is not how we manage our forests here. We're talking about private forest managed lands. We're talking about the forests that we have right back here. You don't invest in the backcountry there because it's private lands. Nobody's ever, not the social credit, nobody else before that has ever invested in private lands. And if the Conservative government is promising to invest in private lands to increase habitat, I'd like to see that on their platform and not just up here.
To add on to that topic, I will start with NDP Stephanie Higginson. Basic, simple question. Do you believe climate change is real and a threat? What are you proposing to do about it?
I do believe that climate change is real and a threat. This is actually one of the reasons why I decided to run, because I live on a river. I see the impact that major environmental events are having. My son is 13, and he said to me, "Mom, I don't know what the point is. The planet is not going to be here for me when I'm an adult." And BC. We are lucky. BC has one of the most comprehensive climate mitigation strategies in North America. The Clean BC plan was developed with the Green Party when we were in a coalition, and we have not veered from it. And it really puts sustainability at the heart of decision-making. We know that we need to start, like I said earlier, we need to start making decisions that are 7 generations away. So with the Clean BC plan, that becomes an actual factor in our economic decision-making, is what is the environmental impact of this, and how are we going to mitigate and offset this? The 30 by 2030 plan, we are so close to being able to accomplish that. But more importantly, sorry, I have a very sore throat tonight. We have so many tools that we are using in order to change behavior, and the Clean BC plan is one of the most ambitious plans, and I will stand by that plan and make sure that we continue it if we are in power.
It's quite interesting to hear a candidate say that they're going to stand by the Clean BC plan when one of the pillars of that plan was a carbon tax. And yet we've got a government that said, well, we're going to get rid of the carbon tax here, but industrial polluters are going to pay. You know what? Industrial polluters aren't paying. They pay $30 a ton for carbon emissions. Do you know what we're going to pay when this carbon tax is maxed out? $170 a ton. That's a massive subsidy to the fossil fuel industry. You look at the amount of revenue that a country like Norway can generate from their fossil fuel sector. $116 billion a year in royalties and revenues. And yes, they have 4 times the size of the sector than we do here in BC. But last year, we collected $800 million. Do the math. We're collecting $800 million for a sector that's a quarter the size of Norway that collects $116 billion. We want to balance our budget. That's a good place to start. We want to reduce carbon emissions. We should stop subsidizing the fossil fuel industry. We are giving them billions of dollars every single year, and it's leading to an increase of emissions. When the candidate here says that the Clean BC plan is working and that it's solid and she will not veer from it, look at our emissions profile. For the last 3 years, emissions are not going down. They're going up. And they're going to continue to go up because neither one of these parties has any serious plan on how to do anything about it. And we need to do this for environmental reasons, but also for economic reasons, because this will help us as a trading nation with Asia.
Conservative Brett Fee.
Yes, we absolutely believe in climate change. We just don't believe in taxing people into poverty is going to change the weather. Rather, what we believe in is, and BC, for example, is responsible for 0.35% of global emissions. So what that means is the rest of the world is producing 99.7% of global emissions. So why are we punishing our people when really we can be the solution to this problem? We have a lot of natural gas in this province, and we want to get it to market, especially to the countries that are burning dirty coal. Natural gas burns 40% cleaner than coal. So why can't we have a more ambitious plan to reduce global emissions by getting our ethically produced products to global markets so that we can actually make a dent in global emissions? Conservatives have the best climate plan right now because we have a plan to think big. We're not thinking small. We want to reduce global emissions to make sure that we tackle climate change on a large scale.
Start this question with independent Adam Walker. It's a two-part question, actually. Without polarizing the opioid drug poisoning crisis, where Indigenous peoples are disproportionately affected, what are your party's policies or plans to reduce Indigenous-specific overdose rates? Part two, what do you think the best strategy is to reduce or completely eliminate toxic drug deaths? What will you do to tackle this problem?
That's a big issue. When you look at the number of deaths that happen in BC, it is disproportionate that people with Indigenous descent are affected by this. And it's tragic. This is repercussions of intergenerational trauma, and it's something that I don't think we're taking as seriously as we should. I was proud to work with the NDP to get Orca Lalem in the news funded. And you know, when that was first introduced, it's a treatment center on reserve, about 20 beds to focus mainly on Indigenous youth. When they first came to government and asked for funding, government said no. They didn't get funded for almost a year and a half. And I went to the minister and said, why are we not funding this project? This is incredibly important. It's going to help Indigenous youth, but also the broader community. And I was told by the minister, well, if we fund this treatment center, it's going to make the other Indigenous treatment centers look bad because they're going to open the next day. And all these other ones that we funded 2 years ago are going to look bad. We shouldn't be making decisions based on politics like that. We need more beds to make sure that people are able to get the help when they need it. We should not be worried about party politics. We should be looking after people in our communities. As far as reducing the toxicity of drug supply in our communities, we need to make sure we're working with the health experts and following their advice. We're not talking about free drugs in every street corner, but when somebody says, I need help, and they can't get into a treatment bed, it is irresponsible not to provide them with something to make sure that they don't die.
I have to agree with my colleague on this one. I just walked by Orca Place while I was canvassing the other day. I came across 6 gentlemen smoking fentanyl outside of Orca Place. I had to stop. So I went over and I chatted with them. And I said, hey guys, if you want to get clean right now, do you have somewhere where you can go to detox? They said, absolutely not. But then I said, if you want to get free government subsidized drugs right now, can you go get those? And they said, absolutely, I can. So does anyone else feel like you're living in the twilight zone here? This is a situation now where our young men can get free drugs paid by you in a moment's notice, but heaven forbid they want to get clean, they can't get access to detox and treatment. So the Conservatives want to focus and double down on detox, rehabilitation, wraparound services, so we don't just bring these folks in and then send them back out into tents again later. We want to make sure these individuals have an opportunity to get healthy again so they can have a quality of life.
Stephanie Higginson.
Thank you. This is a heartbreaking issue. It's really hard to probably find someone in this room who hasn't been affected by the toxic drug crisis. These are our children, our brothers, our parents. It's heartbreaking. And this government has taken considerable action, and we are working relentlessly on building a system of care to address this issue. We have 50 new treatment beds in the region where you can use your health card. You can just walk in with your health card. In 2017, there were 0. We have 321 new supportive homes providing addiction services and treatment in the region, with 273 more on the way. We have the 110-bed Redfish Healing Center is something that that is working. People go and they stay for sometimes up to 9 months, and we see that it's working so well that we are now going to roll one out in every health authority. The Orca Lalem Treatment Center for Youth in Stanawas is the first of its kind in the province, and it's right here in our backyard. That's the type of system of care that we are committed to and that we are rolling out across the province. We need to do more work on this, but criminalizing addicts is not going to solve this problem, and that is what is at risk if we elect a Rustad government.
I will start with NDP Stephanie Higginson. Is your voice okay? You want to rest it for a minute, or you want me? Okay, sure. Do you believe a government running a budget deficit is an ethical practice? And what impacts do you feel this practice has on future governments and generations?
I do believe that it is ethical when we are facing major affordability crises. I mean, it is hard to look around this room, to knock on doors, the stories that we are hearing about the unaffordability crisis, while we are also dealing with a toxic drug crisis. You know, all of these things that we were talking about, we say that we want services, we have to pay for those services. We had a previous government that closed 69 hospitals and didn't build one school. All of these things, we have 10,000 people moving into British Columbia every 37 days. All of these things cost money for us to do. When we are in a crisis, your government needs to be there to support you, and that is what we are doing. We had a balanced budget for 5 years, and it was COVID and global inflation that led us to not have a balanced budget. In our platform, we have laid out a plan for how we will return to a balanced budget. But we know that right now, we need to support people through this crisis, and that's what we're going to do. We're hearing from other candidates about how bad it is. But on top of that, BC has one of the strongest economies of any large province in the country, and we have the fastest private sector job growth in the country. We're doing pretty well economically, so we know we can rely on that when we move out of this crisis.
Conservative rep fee.
It's absolutely irresponsible to run budget deficits. Absolutely. Where does money come from? My colleague thinks it comes from taxes, but it actually comes from economic activity. So what we need to do is get this economy running again so we can get the revenues needed to pay for the services that we need.
Independent, Adam Walker.
Following the logic from my candidate here from the NDP, there's never a good time to run a balanced budget. If we're considering that a cost of living crisis is a reason not to balance the budget, I don't know when is the right time. Our economy is not the strongest in the country. We've got the lowest projected GDP growth this year of any other province. It is frustrating when we're looking at paying 4 cents for every dollar we receive to pay down the debt. And you look at this plan that we have with this province, with this government, and that 4 cents goes up to 5 cents, goes up to 6 cents. That means we've got to cut services. The greater the debt, the less we're able to financially sustain the future services in our province. So no, it's not ethical to be running deficits. And when the NDP says it's because of COVID or it's because of this, I'll tell you why it is that we're running deficits. We ran surpluses under John Horgan. I remember sitting through multiple caucus meetings where the Premier of British Columbia, David Eby, would stand in front of caucus and say, you know what, British Columbians, they don't care if we run a deficit. We just need to spend money where they see it going into their communities. The fact is that people in this room, they care when we run a deficit. People in this room care when we burden future generations with a mortgage that they cannot pay. And people in this room, I know, will not put up with a government that is planning to run deficits year after year after year. And the fact is, when you look at the Conservative platform, they're promising the exact same thing: more spending and more reckless debt.
Absolutely not. That's categorically false. I said we're bringing back our economy. That's where money comes from. Money comes from economic activity, the means of production. We need to get back to making things here in British Columbia so we can grow our economy and pay for all the services that we need. That is the plan, not to run deficits and not to tax people into poverty.
Stephanie Higginson, NDP.
Thanks. I just want to point out some facts about the BC economy. BC's finances are strong. We have one of the lowest debt to GDP ratios in the country. It's actually 43% lower than Ontario, who's had a conservative government since 2017. We have the fastest growing economy of any major province since 2017. We've created more than 250,000 jobs, including some of the strongest private sector job growth in the country. We have the highest wage growth amongst provinces. We have the lowest unemployment rate amongst provinces. And in the last 2 years, we have attracted a record-setting $117 billion in capital investment. You can have strong public services and a strong economy.
I've been in the NDP and I know where this binder comes from. It comes from the comms workshop. This stuff is so out of date, it's embarrassing. If you look at the TD September 19th report on this province, page 3, 0.9% GDP growth. It is by far the lowest growth of any province in the country. I understand the NDP, they mean well. I understand this candidate's just reading what's there. But the fact is that the platform that's put out by David Eby is promising to spend billions of dollars more than we don't have, and John Rusted's platform is costing billions and billions of dollars of unpromised commitments.
Okay, moving forward. Okay, unless anybody wants to buy another rebuttal box.
I'm out.
You out?
Oh yeah, spendthrift.
In the age of truth and reconciliation, where we are still reckoning with our colonial history in 2024, how might your party improve on the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act enacted in 2019?
Hey, listen, I talked about growing the economy, but we can't do that without our Indigenous partners in this province and the various nations that comprise this province. We have to have a very solid working relationship. But at the end of the day, I don't believe in taking from one group and giving to another. What that does is that creates a lot of animosity in our society and a lot of anger. What we need to do is focus on what we have in similarities rather than our differences. And then we need to partner together so that everybody can prosper and that everyone in this province can grow together in a positive way.
Independent, Adam Walker.
That answer concerns me. The treaty process requires that we take from one group, us who are on unceded lands, territories that we don't control. These are territories that were not given up by the Qualicum First Nation, the Snanawas, the Comox. We need to make sure we're working together with First Nations, but this mentality that by settling a treaty, by coming together, government to government in a relationship and finding a way to make sure that that nation is compensated for the loss of the habitat, the loss of their previous rights on that land, that's the right thing to do, is to work with those nations. It's not about taking from one person and giving to another. It's about doing what's right as far as reconciliation goes. The other thing I want to mention is who's gone down and seen that incredible artwork on the beginning of the roundabout here in Qualicum Beach. We need to see more of that in our communities. We need to celebrate the cultures that exist on this land. It's not that these cultures existed before us. They're still with us today. Jesse Racalma did an incredible job with that, and I'm excited to see more of that. The other thing we need to do is the Truth and Reconciliation Commission put together a significant body of work before a massive amount of trauma for the individuals to engage in that process, and there's a series of recommendations that we're supposed to do, government provincially, federally, and locally. Government provincially still hasn't met all of the obligations under the TRC, and we need to make sure that gets done.
Stephanie Higginson.
Thank you. Since we were the government that implemented UNDRIP, we are committed to this deeply. It was one of the proudest days I had as a British Columbian. And this idea that you take from one to give to the other is hurtful. It's untrue. It's not a path forward. You can have reconciliation in sort of one of two ways. The way we did it in the past under the previous Liberal government, where Rustad was part of it, which is just to fight people in court, where it's a very, very hard and toxic process where you're forced to say terrible things to each other and about each other, and then the outcome is imposed on you, and nobody gets a say in it. But you could also have negotiated treaties where the community is involved, where the people who are going to be impacted most are involved. There is not one private landowner in this province who has lost their private land because of a negotiated treaty. In fact, the Haida Nation treaty shows that those folks know exactly what's going to happen with the land because the treaty negotiation has happened and been announced, and it's done, and it was negotiated between people in a beautiful, wonderful way that took everybody's thoughts into consideration. And that's the path forward, not a toxic court-based battle that takes the rights away from people and is not a dignified way to treat people.
Is anybody familiar with the Ladysmith Marina? Anybody familiar what happened in the Ladysmith Marine Society? They did have a situation where that marine was taken from one group, given to another with absolutely no consultation with anybody. It was just unilaterally given down, and then the society had absolutely no recourse in terms of how they could get anything done with this. They weren't heard by the town, they weren't heard by anybody. The marina was taken away from them, and I'm not saying we don't want to have a lot of reconciliation, but taking from one from another is creating, and I'm just telling you what I'm hearing. It's creating a lot of anger and animosity, and we got to get away from that.
I had a very interesting question here, kind of a fun one. Here you go. I will start with our NDP, Stephanie Higginson. To encourage ongoing participation in elections, would you consider lowering the voting age to 16 and having as many polling stations as possible in high school?
What an interesting question. And actually, as a school trustee, there was a motion to the BC School Trustees Association to have the voting age of people for school trustees because it impacted them so much lowered. And we put it forward to government, and it was refused for all sorts of reasons. So would I support this? I would support a conversation on it for sure. I would support a conversation on making sure that the young people who have who would be given the ability and the authority to vote would have really great opportunities to engage in the civic dialogue and make sure that they understood clearly. I think it's an excellent opportunity and lesson on civic governance, but it needs to be done carefully because I was also part of a school trustee vote where they brought it into the student vote, and the students all voted. Everybody spoke really clearly and lovely and eloquently, and the students voted for the person who wanted to legalize marijuana in the schools. So, it's not without its risks, but I believe it's a really worthy conversation in order to improve engagement in voter turnout. We really need to make sure that everybody is engaged in voter turnout. It's an important issue, an important topic.
Thank you. Independent, Adam Walker.
Well, I'll bury the lead and say no, but explain why. I think that we need to make sure that our youth, and we got a lot of really, really bright young people in this community, we need to make sure that they're engaged in the civic process. UBCM, which is this agglomeration of all local governments, have asked repeatedly for the province to lower the voting age in municipal elections. And I think what we should do is start with local governments that choose to opt in to lower the voting age. There's an opportunity here to experiment, and that's not a word I should use as a politician, I guess, but there's an opportunity here where we can try in some communities that want to step up and want to try to see what that means in their communities where they can do that. Because we got to find ways to get people to get out and vote. And if we can see positive feedback from that process, by all means, I'm excited about the idea of looking at that as at a provincial level, but we need to start with it at a level that is more directly related to the people in their community. When I go to the classrooms as the MLA, I am absolutely blown away with the insights of the students that I meet with. And when I get adults coming through my office at the constituency office, sometimes I'm less than impressed. But you know what? We got to do this by gradual steps. We got to do this in a measured way. And I think that for those local governments that want to try this out, I think we should give them that opportunity right away. UBCM's been asking for it. Local government's been asking for it. And let's let those communities lead the way.
Certainly, let's see.
Well, I'm looking back to when I was 16, and I'm not too terribly sure if that's such a great idea. But having said that, I am in favor of teaching kids how to think, not what to think. So if our kids are being taught to be critical thinkers in schools, if they're not taught to think a certain way per se, they're given facts with absolutely no opinion, and then kids are taught how to think critically to the point where they can look at an issue with no bias and come up with their own decision making, then I would, explore something like that. But I'm not seeing that right now with kids these days. What I'm really concerned with in our school system is our kids are more often than not being taught what to think rather than how to think. Now, there's some good teachers out there that really make a concerted effort not to be biased and just shoot or straight shooters, and I think that's really important in our school system. We need to teach our kids to be critical thinkers, and that's what I'm an advocate for, and I'll continue to advocate for that in our school systems.
This is one directed just to one, Adam Walker for the Independent Party. You were elected as an NDP but were removed from the party. Do you still follow their principles?
I have spoken in the legislature many, many times against the NDP. I voted against a deficit budget, and I have held government to account for some of the decisions that they've made. And I think the elephant in the room is, what the heck happened? And it's unfortunate that I can't really talk about this in a public way. But when I had repeated, recurring, serious issues with a unionized employee in my office, the Premier and I had two very different priorities. Mine was to make sure that people in this community were kept safe and that my office was able to serve people in here. The Premier's priority was to make sure that he maintained his relationship with the union. And I will always put this community ahead of party politics. I have shown over the last year as an independent what the strength of being an independent MLA is, and that's by agreeing with the NDP or whatever government's in power when they get it right, and standing up for this community when they don't have it right. When I was in that party, I was told how to vote. I was told what to say. I had a binder just like this one that told us, this is the real world. Don't worry about what you hear from people out there. The fact is that when you're an independent, you can bring voices from your community front and center. And one of the best parts was I had no idea my office budget doubled. I went from 2 staff people to 6 staff people. I am now able, through my office, to lead initiatives like these health centers in Parksville and Qualicum instead of waiting government to show up empty-handed.
This is also directed to Adam Walker, and then we'll go to the other 2 candidates. Are there plans to make more private delivery of healthcare coming for the province and this community?
I guess it depends who gets elected as the next premier. We hear from the NDP that everything's fine in healthcare. We got 800 new doctors. Don't worry, everything's fine. And yet they canceled that health center in Coombs, the $2 million health center that was supposed to connect thousands of people. We're hearing from the BC Conservatives that we need to focus on privatizing the delivery of healthcare. You know what? My grandfather was an MLA in Saskatchewan for 19 years. CCF, what the NDP used to be, the good old days. He worked with Tommy Douglas and he brought healthcare to Canadians. It's something that I'm incredibly proud of. The idea of privatizing healthcare service in our communities and across this province is something that is very troubling to me. The idea of having a private hospital, the idea of having people be able to pay to get access to healthcare, it really scares me. I hear from the Conservative candidate and he says, we've got the highest spending of any country in the OECD. Well, let's look at this. The United States, they spend $13,000 per person per year on healthcare. That's a private model. That's a broken healthcare system. And you have to scroll down all the way to number 12 to get to where we spend $6,000 a year on healthcare. We need to spend more money on healthcare. We need to bolster the public healthcare system. We need to make sure that when people need that healthcare, that it is there for them, and we have a public system that's able to do that.
Stephanie Higginson.
There will not be a privatized healthcare system under the NDP. I can say that with great confidence. And I do take issue with the fact that we are saying that this is we say that everything is fine. We know that everything is not fine. And that's why we're working our tails off to fix the issue. I presented you with some of the solutions to the problems that are happening, and we're going to keep doing that work until it makes it to your doorsteps. But what we have done with our public healthcare system is had generational investments in the Mid-Island region in capital, because we know that you need to build it and they will come. 309 new long-term care beds will open in Landsville, and that will relieve some of the pressure on the hospital. We're opening a new cancer care center and the Nanaimo Regional General Hospital. We opened a new ICU at the Nanaimo Regional General Hospital. We're about to open a new high acuity wing at the Nanaimo Regional General Hospital. We have new hospitals operating in Comox and under construction in Duncan. And we're going to, as an election promise, we're going to build a new tower at the Nanaimo Regional General Hospital. All those other things are government actions that are happening. The tower is a promise. We know that we have more work to do on this, and we are committed to doing it, and we are the only party that has given you solutions to this, and we are going to keep working to do this. It is all at risk. They closed 69 hospitals across the province, 69 hospitals.
We're already sending our cancer patients to Washington State and paying their private system to treat our patients because we have this dogma about how we can't treat our patients close to home. I've talked to a lot of people on the doorstep who've had to go to Arizona just to get their shoulder done. I mean, how many people in this room tonight have had to go to other places just to get health care? It's unbelievable. We need to care for our people closer to home. We're not in favor of the American model. What we're in favor of is the Western European model countries like the Scandinavian countries, the Netherlands. Look at some of these countries who have already sort of figured this out. They spend way less money than we do on healthcare. They get far better outcomes. So what we're looking to do is bolster the public system, but provide some non-governmental services to backstop so that our people can get the care they deserve in a timely fashion. Right now, they're having to wait, and then if they can't get it here, we're shipping them off other places. That's absolutely unacceptable. What we want to do is create a system whereby, should you need an MRI or a CT scan or a biopsy, and the public system is taking too long, you're going to get a phone call and says, hey, can you go to this clinic? Absolutely. You flash your health card, you get the service under a single payer model. The patient doesn't know any different. The only thing the patient knows is that they're getting timely care.
Staying with Conservative Brett Fee, how do the Conservatives and the other parties as well plan to reduce the BC healthcare budget by $4 billion? Will you be mothballing hospitals, firing nurses and doctors, etc.?
You know, it's funny because that's absolutely categorically false. The NDP has been running a pretty nasty campaign of a lot of lies, and that's one of the big ones. If you look at our platform, we're actually going to increase our health spending to over 12% of GDP over the first 2 years of our platform program to deal with all of these backlogs. So if you look at our program, we're actually going to be increasing healthcare spending.
And you think Stephanie Higginson would like to comment on that?
Sure. It's quite clearly in the platform that they will have to cut $4.1 billion because they say that they are going to use healthcare spending. They're going to bring it down as a percentage of the GDP from 12.5% to 11%. And if the economy continues to grow, then that'll be an even larger amount that they cut. And it's no surprise because they have a 20-year record of healthcare cuts. In 2009, they forced health authorities to absorb 360 cuts, causing a reduction of thousands of MRIs, and they forced surgeries. Surgery wait times increased incredibly. They left us with the longest family doctor wait list in the history of BC. They left 900,000 people on the wait list. 250,000 before they made a promise that they were going to connect every Canadian or every British Columbian to a family doctor. This is a risk that we can't afford. They have slashed our healthcare budgets before, and they will do it again at a time when we are in a healthcare crisis. We need to invest in our healthcare, and we need to make sure that everybody has access to healthcare where they live, when they need it. That is our promise, and that is what we are committed to doing for the people of Ladysmith-Oceanside.
When you say they,
Wait, just hold on just a second, let me first get,
oh, you have a rebuttal?
no, he hasn't spoken yet, so we'll let you
Oh.
rebuttal after.
Sure.
Independent Walker speak.
Sorry.
Okay. So I am concerned about what I'm hearing from the BC Conservatives about how they're going to solve our healthcare crisis. First I want to recognize, when the NDP says, they left us with the largest unattached people looking for a family doctor, that list has gone from 6,000 to 12,000 in this community in the time that the NDP has been in power. And so we cannot let them off the hook for that one. People here deserve access to a healthcare, and you cannot be blaming other governments for that failure. When you talk about 2/3 of the staff at Island Health being expendable, not frontline staff, not nurses, not doctors, what you're talking about are the cleaning staff. What you're talking about are the admins. You're talking about the people who are on the floor. Well, it wasn't that long ago that a right-leaning government decided we can save a bit of money in our hospitals. We're going to privatize cleaning staff. And I don't know how many of you all remember that dark day, but there were 9,000 people, mostly women, that were fired from their jobs and rehired for 25% less of their regular pay. And worse than that, it led to dozens of people getting sick and a person dying at the Nanaimo hospital. The idea that we're going to find efficiencies by tackling the 2/3 of Island Health staff that are not doctors and nurses and somehow privatizing them, that scares the heck out of me. And we need to make sure that our public healthcare system is there for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think my colleague here is a little confused. The Conservative government hasn't been in power in BC since 1928. So I'm not really quite sure what point you're trying to make there. Not you, I'm talking about my other colleague here. I had a rebuttal in a way before, so I was just trying to keep that in mind. Yeah, so when they say they, I'm not really sure what they're talking about. And then, like I say, we're not looking to reinvent the wheel here. There's a lot of places, especially in Western Europe, that have figured this out. Okay, when you're in a crisis, you have to try something different. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. It's now time to try something different.
Okay, I have a question for everybody here as well as the candidates. Stephanie, knowing that your voice is going very rapidly, is anybody opposed to us wrapping up a little earlier? You okay by doing that? You sure? Okay, very good. Well, this will be a good one for you, though, because this is just a yes or no answer. And does each candidate reside within the now newly established Ladysmith-Oceanside riding?
Yes.
Yeah, just throw out a yes or no. Do you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
No,
No. Okay.
100 meters from the border. You can throw a rock from my driveway. My kid does it every day just to think, because he thinks it's fun.
Okay, fair enough. Increases in hydro, water, property taxes, and more have gone through the roof in the last year, becoming so incredible and screaming on so many. There seems to be no concern that this will drive some people to lose their homes and more. How will you bring increased taxation under control and also be accountable for how it is spent? I'll start with independent Adam Walker.
Well, first we're talking about hydro and then taxation. So I'll stick to hydro because I'm not sure what the question was. In our province, we have a very strange relationship with BC Hydro. We have government that is telling them what to do and how to do it, and it is being mismanaged. The amount of debt that is sitting on BC Hydro's balance sheet should scare all of us. Our hydro rates, when Site C is finally producing power and shows up on people's hydro bills, it's going to be a lot of money. But what concerns me most was watching this last spring when a ban came in banning cryptocurrency mining from using the BC Hydro power grid. And that's fine. You want to ban a tech company from getting power. That's the government's prerogative. But when we were going through the debates, the real reason they were banning these cryptocurrency mining operations from getting access to power is because industrial users buy electricity from BC Hydro for 6.5 cents a kilowatt hour. That's a lot less than what we pay. But the real problem is that BC Hydro buys it for 7 cents a kilowatt hour. So we structurally have an organization that as industry decarbonizes, as people start using more and more electricity instead of natural gas, we've got a BC Hydro corporation that inherently is going to lose money as we start tackling climate change. That's going to fall on the balance sheets and the pocketbooks of all of us when we get our hydro bills. I am very concerned about the way BC Hydro is being managed by this government.
We live in a time where we need more energy, not less of it. We need to look at getting energy from various different sources, whether that be hydroelectricity, nuclear, solar, wind. We have to look at everything here, and we can't be restrictive on any of it. Because what is the number one thing that attributes to a quality of life is abundant access to affordable energy. We can't be dealing with rolling blackouts because we have some idea that we don't want to invest in nuclear. We don't want to invest in other forms of energy. So energy independence is really important to maintain a standard of living. But in terms of taxation, yes, I did mention we're going to eliminate the carbon tax, but we're going to be implementing a red tape reduction law. What that is for every new restriction or regulation we implement, we have to find somewhere else to reduce or eliminate red tape in another area. So we don't have endless restrictions and red tape bogging down our economy. And the last thing we want to do in terms of small business is we're looking to cut the small business tax rate down to 1% to bring some relief to our small businesses.
Thanks. I'm pretty sure the question is about taxation and rising hydro costs. Somehow we got onto alternative energy sources. By the way, we live in an earthquake zone. Nuclear power is just not a reliable option for us when we live in an earthquake zone.
There's a lot of places in
But
BC
I
that
will
aren't
say
earthquake zone.
that the BC NDP has given the largest middle-class tax break in a generation. We have cut childcare costs for people. We cut MSP costs for a family of 4. That's a savings of $1,800 a year. We are giving ICBC rebates, or we've cut ICBC costs, by $500 a year. And our hydro costs are currently frozen, or they're tied to the cost of living inflation, costs, because we are in an affordability crisis. And under the Rustad, when Rustad was in power, they rose 80% on people. And so we are determined to make sure that we keep costs low. We also haven't raised income tax since 2017 on people other than people who are making over $150,000 a year, and that was 2.1% increase. So it is a misnomer that we are raising taxes. In fact, we are saving people money, and Rustad has made it very clear. They will bring back MSP payments. We've seen their record. They will do it again.
Everybody get a chance there? Rebuttal. Okay,
Well,
rebuttal.
we didn't say we're raising MSP premiums, so I just want to be clear on that.
Okay, good. Okay, because we are wrapping up, I'm going to give you one more question, and I'll give you an opportunity for your closing remarks. I will start at this end with Conservative Brett B. With so many areas of crisis in this area, what would be your first priority?
We have to make sure our people get timely access to healthcare, period.
Yeah, healthcare for sure is the number one issue. And as an independent MLA, I've got the strength of a team behind me to be able to deliver results at a local level. We've been working on this clinic in Parksville for the last 6 months, a 15-patient exam room clinic with a mobile medical unit, so that people in our community are able to get access to the healthcare they deserve. And for those that are unable to be able to get to the physical location, the mobile medical unit will be able to get primary care to their homes, to rural communities, to people with mobility issues. This is the number one issue that I've heard from in the last 4 years. Those 3,000 meetings that I had with constituents, by far and above, this is the biggest issue for our community. And we have solutions for it. We don't have to wait for Victoria to tweak some plan or something else. We're ready to go. We've got a location. We've got a floor plan. We've got a business plan. We even have doctors that want to get in there. And you know what? We've got 6 internationally trained foreign doctors in Oceanside right now. that can't practice medicine. Some of them have been here for 2 years. We've been working closely with them to try to help them navigate this process. They're getting their tests done. That test is a 9-hour test. Can you imagine sitting there for 9 hours doing a test and medical exam? And it's $2,500. So we're helping these people get their credentials recognized. We're building a clinic in Parksville, and we're going to make sure that we get the one in Qualicum moving forward as soon as possible.
Yes. Pardon me?
You used all your results.
Did I?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I just say something?
No, we're going to jump over to
That's right.
the NDP, Stephanie Higginson.
Thank you. I agree, it's healthcare. There is no doubt this is the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 issue in this community. And it seems like all the work that we're doing isn't noticeable yet because we've been doing so much of that structural and systemic change work that is required. Streamlining the ability for foreign doctors to get certified here, 900 of them in the last year. We're making it happen. You know, changing the way family doctors are paid in order to stop having a glut of family doctors in BC and start attracting them. It's starting to happen. 4,000 people a week in BC are getting attached to family doctors. We need that to happen here. I've heard my colleague throughout our debates talk about the clinic in Parksville. I have talked to people at Health to find out more about it. I've talked to people in local government. Right now, this is an idea. It's a great idea. I look forward to helping work on bringing more healthcare to our community. But what I do know is that with the NDP, we have real and substantive progress happening on healthcare, and we will make sure that we can continue to do that. We're not talking in theories or ideas. We're talking in action that we've seen progress on, and we're turning the corner on these things. And I can't wait to bring that to Ladysmith-Oceanside and make sure that the Oceanside community is well served. These things are at risk if we change government.
Thank you. Each candidate now will have 3 minutes for their closing remarks. And I'll go the opposite direction that I started with. I'll go from the last name, Independent Adam Walker, and then we will have NDP Stephanie Higginson, and then Conservative Brett Fee. So go ahead, Adam.
First, I want to thank all of you for coming here tonight. This room holds about 400 people, and it is very close to being full, and that is a testament to the people of Qualicum Beach and Oceanside broadly and their desire to make sure that government represents them. So thank you all very much. You give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you all for coming here tonight. You know, I've listened carefully to the other two candidates here about their vision for this province, but more importantly, their vision for this community. There's not a lot of tangible details about what they're going to do if elected to get things going. You know, the first comment that I noticed from the NDP was she said she doesn't know why it's not happening here when it's happening elsewhere when it comes to attachment of people. Well, I know why. I've been at this job for 4 years, and I know exactly what we have to do to solve this problem. Yes, the Minister of Health does not know about this clinic that we're working on in Parksville because the last time I presented a clinic proposal to him, he said, no, this community is not a political risk, so he's not going to worry about funding healthcare here. That's a big problem. That's a big challenge. I'm working very closely with Island Health on this. I'm working very closely with staff from the PCN on this. I'm working very closely with doctors in our local community so they know what's going on here. We cannot wait any longer for government to come up with solutions to these problems. When she says all the work that's happening is not noticeable, it is noticeable. Our deficit is $9 billion this year. Housing prices are more affordable than we've ever seen. We've got more people living on the street than we've ever seen in this community. We need to tackle these issues head on. It's not about waiting for some minister to draft through their staff a binder that says, well, this is what's actually happening. It's about talking to people in this community and finding solutions to the challenges that affect all of us. You know, all of us have different experiences and backgrounds, but a lot of us are facing a lot of the same challenges. And when we work together, we can achieve really great things. This clinic in Parksville is more than an idea. We've got a property owner, 84 years old. Guy's made a lot of money here. He wants to give back. He wants to leave a lasting legacy to this community. When somebody wants to step up and make a difference for the betterment of each other, I don't call those theories or projects. I call that doing the right thing. I call that community. And that's what we need to see here. And it's more than just tackling healthcare. Our team and our office is doing some amazing work. The Qualicum Commons and Parksville Commons properties, we've led an initiative to try to protect those properties. We're working with local governments and nonprofits in our community to come up with a long-term solution to homelessness in our community. We're facing a lot of problems, and we just can't wait for these parties to stop fighting with each other to get solutions. I really hope that I've earned your trust and your faith that this is an election worth fighting for, and that as an independent candidate, I am your best choice.
NDP Stephanie Higginson.
Thank you. I just want to thank all of you as well for coming. This has been an amazing experience presenting ideas and solutions to you for some of the biggest challenges that we are facing. You know, town halls are a really great opportunity for you to get to meet your candidates and make decisions about things that are important to you, to your community, and to the province. And I talked a little bit earlier about my time as a school trustee. I call it the tale of two terms, where under one term, I spent the entire term cutting budgets, closing schools, laying off staff, and we never actually got to talk about teaching, learning, and assessment. That was under the Liberal government where John Rustad was a minister. Under the NDP government, we actually got to vote to open a school. It opens after my term. We hired 100 new teachers. We built back our support staff bigger and better than it was before. And I feel like that's a story that can be built out over public services across BC. The choice is clear. And we have a party that puts people first, that comes up with creative and interesting solutions to the problems that we are facing, like tackling how family doctors were paid in order to be able to hire more and not just keep doing the same thing over and over. And we have a party that has a proven track record of making cuts, closing hospitals, closing schools, not showing up for people when they need it most. These are provincial issues that require provincial solutions. We need a team that is working for you. The BC NDP team has been working relentlessly during a time of intersecting crises to serve the people of British Columbia. And we won't stop working for you on these monumental issues until the job is done. My community's vision is that we don't just get by, that we get ahead, and that we have a thriving community that sees itself reflected in the provincial legislation that's being offered to solve these intersecting crises that we're facing. All of this is at risk with John Rustad and his team of very inexperienced candidates, some of whom have demonstrated climate denial, some of who have spread conspiracy theories. It's worrisome. If we think we have a medical recruitment and retention problem now, think about how medical staff will feel wanting to come to this province. They will cancel the progress that I talked about here tonight. They will make our lives harder and more divisive, and that is not what I want for you, and that's not what I want for my children or our future generations. This community deserves an MLA that can affect change for you every day. The BC NDP hasn't stopped working for you, and we won't stop working for you until the job is done.
Thank you. Conservative Brent Fee.
Thank you. Tonight, you've heard two clear visions of the future of our province. My opponents, the BC NDP and Mr. Walker, unfortunately offer more of the same. Endless spending, failing healthcare, rising crime, and no real solutions for homelessness and addictions. They believe in government control over your life, and we've seen the results. In contrast, the BC Conservatives believe in empowering communities, supporting those in need, while enforcing public safety and lowering the cost of living for seniors and hardworking families. We're committed to real action, not empty promises. The choice is simple: more of the same failed policies or a new path forward with the Conservative Party of BC. Together, we can build a safer, healthier, and more affordable British Columbia.
Thank you, candidates. I want to thank all of you for coming out. This is very impressive. I'm glad that, Adam Walker said, give yourself a big round of applause. And more importantly, On the 19th of October, get to the polls and vote. Do the advance poll if you need to. A lot of people have trouble with transportation, so get the buddy system going, get a hold of some people that can drive you to the polls. I want to thank the Qualicum Beach Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event in the town of Qualicum Beach. My name is Matt Breedlove. It's been a pleasure here to serve you this evening, and please applaud. You're welcome. All the candidates, and wish them luck, and drive safe. Thank you very much.